Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of the first 90%. I'm so excited, I'm absolutely thrilled to be sitting down with Chris Yeh, who is the co-founder of Blitzscaling Ventures and also the co-author of the book Blitzscaling with Reid Hoffman, founder of LinkedIn. Thank you so much for doing this with me.
My pleasure. I'm really glad to get a chance to chat and also to share some of the ideas we've been talking about today.
Awesome. So first thing that I really want to know, because it's been on my mind, does blitzscaling apply in 2024, especially with the investment scene, investment winter, start of winter that they are talking about these days?
Absolutely. So the important thing to remember about blitzscaling is that it is both relative and contextual. Of course, the context of the kind of market we're in matters. In a boom time like in 2019, 2020, 2021, of course, money is easy to come by, and therefore, you probably spend more money than you normally would. But on the other hand, you're still spending money for the same reason, which is relative growth in comparison to your competitors. The principle of blitzscaling is you win a winner-take-most market by becoming the market leader. And so if your sector is growing more slowly, slower growth will still give you market leadership.
So I think you mentioned a very important point, which a lot of people who, especially founders, they miss, which is that if it is a winner-take-all market,
yes,
right?
So that's key.
That's a key caveat, which a lot of founders sort of, they don't know whether it's a winner-take-all market or not. So how does one decide whether they are in a winner-take market?
So there are two things that can lead to a winner-take-all market or winner-take-most market. The first are network effects. So network effects occur when, as the number of users grows, the value per user grows. So the value of that is that not only are you getting massive value growth because you're multiplying increasing value by a skyrocketing number of users, but also the competitive advantage becomes insurmountable. So as your network value grows, it eventually dwarfs the actual product value. So if someone comes in and replicates your product, they can't replicate the network value. So that's one way. But there is another way, which we call the land grab, where once a customer becomes a customer, they never leave. So a classic example of this is, take a look at Oracle. Oracle is a company where everyone hates the company, everyone hates the software, but they can't leave. Right? And that is the power of a land grab.
So you're saying that if one of these two conditions is true, then absolutely blitzscaling principles will apply.
They may apply. You still need a couple of other things. You still need to have product market fit, because companies need to be sustainable. It needs to be a large market. That's very valuable, because otherwise, why take on all this risk? And you have to actually scale appropriately. But that is the most important thing, that network effect, that winner-take-most market dynamic. And that's why, as we were discussing at dinner, WeWork did not make sense as a blitzscaler, even though they applied blitzscaling techniques. Co-working is not a winner-take-most market. If you build a beautiful co-working building, there's a building to the left and a building to the right, and those people could be competitors. There's no way to lock in the market. And actually, there's a negative network effect, because do you want to work in a WeWork that's super crowded or one that's pretty sparse? You'd rather it be sparse, so you have more room for yourself.
So the way that you're explaining it, it sounds so clear and logical, and also so simple to understand, right? Because the way that you're explaining it is just like, that's how it should be. So then why is it that a lot of smart people around the world and also smart investors don't realize this? Like, how did a company like WeWork get so much funding?
So the thing you have to remember is that it is a lot of fun to raise a lot of money and spend a lot of money, to get a lot of attention. And a surprisingly large number of people who set out to blitzscale never actually read the book, never actually saw the full story. And I think that there is a lot ways that our world just rewards people. I mean, don't forget, Adam Neumann over at WeWork walked away with $1 billion.
Absolutely,
So that's why people do that. However, I think that, of course, the better approach is to read the entire book and then blitzscale under the right circumstances. Because the thing is, if you're approaching an opportunity that's not actually blitzscalable and you use blitzscaling techniques, you're actually destroying value for yourself.
Right. A lot of people just watch the YouTube summary. 5 minutes. So what do you think are the most common mistakes that founders make, especially maybe between seed to Series B, that stage?
So the biggest mistake that founders make is they believe that once they've solved a problem, they've solved that problem forever.
Okay.
So the fact is that growing a company is really hard. And as the company grows, the entire world is changing around you, right? Time is passing, there are new competitors. And so if you have this belief, like, oh, I solved product market fit, I don't need to worry about that again, it's going to come back around and bite you. Because product market fit or having the right marketing plan, having the distribution strategy, those are all temporary things. You have to always be on the lookout for when those stop working so that you can create new techniques. And so this is one of the toughest parts about being an entrepreneur. You have to constantly learn new techniques and also let go of the old ones.
Can you give an example of a company that we might know or audience might know that it makes it more relatable, this concept?
Sure. So let's consider a company that we heard a lot about today, like Netflix. Netflix first became a successful company, became a publicly traded company by mailing out DVDs.
Right.
And that was the business.
Yeah.
And then one day they had to make a choice. What are we going to do about streaming and the DVD business? If they thought, listen, the lesson here is we're going to be the best in the world at mailing out DVDs, they would no longer exist.
Yeah.
Right? The world changed. Now, to Netflix's credit, which is why it's one of the world's most valuable companies, it led that change as opposed to allowing someone to come up and disrupt it.
Right. It almost seems like, for example, the Netflix that you talked about, they reached a certain stage where they got early adopters and they had to sort of cross the chasm. And for that, they needed to make that change.
Yeah, so I think the best way to think about it is that when you have any new technology or product, there can be an S curve of adoption.
Yes.
Right? You get to this beautiful phase, the hockey stick, and you're so excited. But eventually it's going to level off. So with DVDs, that was leveling off and they could see something new coming in. But a lot of people have a difficult time letting go of past success. Well, maybe let's just keep riding DVDs for a little bit longer.
How do you make that decision? That whether you want to keep riding it or let go of the past and try something completely new? Because there is a big opportunity cost there, right?
So the key is you have to actually be looking at metrics, right? You should make this as a data-driven decision. Within Netflix, they could see, here's where the DVD business is now, it's starting to weaken. At the same time, Reed Hastings, who was the founder of Netflix and was CEO for many, many years, said, we're looking at the increasing bandwidth available and the decreasing cost of that bandwidth. And so you could watch those lines and see the point at which it would actually cost less to stream a movie than to mail a movie. And so knowing those facts, those metrics, allowed them to actually make that decision.
How important is a founder's gut feel versus data? Because in the early stages, you might not have that much data. And we hear a lot of stories about charismatic founders who lead from their heart, right? Is that real, or is that just like a unicorn, that mystical creature like the unicorn?
So it is real, but under specific circumstances. So within Blitzscaling, we talk about how you need to transition from inspiration to data. What does that mean? At the beginning, there is not enough data to make a decision. You have to go with your gut. You have to have that inspiration. And the example I always give is there was no data that told Steve Jobs that a telephone should have no buttons.
Exactly.
But he just decided that's the way it should be. That was inspiration. But the iPhone 16 that you might have in your pocket, or that we're even shooting this on, was not built off of hunches, right? There's tremendous amounts of data that have been used to refine that design and make it even better.
Got it. Now, how many companies have you invested in?
So personally, over time, between my angel investing and my various venture capital funds, I have probably invested in about 75 companies. And then I've advised and helped or mentored hundreds more. So on my bio, when I speak, we say 100 companies. That's because the real number would be like terrifying to people. If I said over 500 companies, they say, wait a minute, this can't be right. So I actually lie and use a lower number because it seems more credible.
So it's safe to say that you've seen all types of founders from around the world, different cultures, different. What are some common themes around founders who make it versus founders who maybe look like they would, but they did not?
So I think that there are a couple things. The first thing is, very importantly, the founders are able to bring people along on their journey. Right? No matter how brilliant you are as a founder, you need other people to be a part of that journey. And your ability to convince them to come with you is critical. The other thing is
to attract talent,
to attract and retain talent. Right? You have to do both. But then the other side of it is just what I was saying. The great founders know how to adjust. They don't just say, well, I came up with this brilliant business model and we're just going to stick with that. And whatever we did that worked before, it's going to keep on working. They are paranoid. They understand that they have to constantly be checking the things that are happening. And if they start to stop working, then they have to learn new lessons.
How do you when you're looking to invest, especially in early stage, and investors tell us that, the founder is important in the early stage. How do you check for these things? How do you determine whether this founder has these qualities that you're looking for?
So there's no way to know for sure, but there are several things that you can do. The first is you can actually ask the founder, hey, what's something that you used to think was true that is no longer true? Or what's an example where you changed your mind about something and why? But founders can say all sorts of things and be very convincing. What you then have to do is go to their references, the people who worked with them over time, and ask them, what was this person actually like? Did they actually recognize that times had changed? Were they able to make those tough calls?
Got it. But do you think that most founders who succeed are of the same type, or they all
They're all
this
different
is just
kinds.
a common theme that
this is just a common theme. Like founders, some people they love that charismatic founder who's a brilliant public speaker. That's great. That's the easiest. But I've met plenty of very successful entrepreneurs who are introverts, who don't like talking. That's okay too, if you can do the things I talked about. Attract people, retain them, and be able to learn and change and grow with the company.
How important is the why of the founder? The reason they are in the business, the reason they started the company.
So it is absolutely essential at the beginning. And that is because things are going to be so hard that only someone who cares and has passion will persist long enough to make it through those obstacles. Doesn't guarantee they will. They might still fail. But anyone who gets into this for the money or the fame is going to quickly decide, screw this is too hard.
So a couple of questions about you.
Yes.
How did you reach where you are? How did you get the opportunity to write the book with Reid Hoffman? How do you get the opportunity to advise and mentor and invest in 500 startups? What keeps you going on a personal level?
So I was very lucky in a variety of ways. So I was born in Southern California, and I happened to go to Stanford for my undergraduate years right as the internet was starting to take off. I was one of the first classes that got email accounts, for example. So I happened to be in the right place at the right time. But the other thing that I think has helped me be successful is I've always tried to learn. And I didn't say, well, I already know it all. Right? Because things are always changing. The world is always changing. And so having curiosity and openness to new things has been critical. The final thing I would say is, understand what your specific skills are. I happen to be lucky enough that when I was an undergraduate, I began teaching public speaking, and I've leveraged that communications ability into so many of the things I do.
So final two questions.
Yes.
So in my podcast, we try to connect the dots to the first few years, the foundational years, to what the person turned out to be as an adult. How did you get into Stanford? What aspects of your childhood can you connect to? Because getting into Stanford itself is a big achievement.
It is very difficult. It was easier when I got in. It was a long time ago. So the key thing is I think for most people, my parents. So I have a combination of math and science as well as literature and reading, and that comes from my parents. My father got his PhD in electrical engineering from UCLA and worked as a research scientist. My mother got her master's in library science from USC. And so as we were growing up, she always volunteered at all the libraries at all the schools. So I had access to all the books. And meanwhile, I had my father, who again had a PhD in electrical engineering and knew almost everything about the physical world to teach me. And so taking in all that information, I was in this great environment for learning, which allowed me to go to Stanford and again, created that desire to learn and continue changing and adapting.
Awesome. And any final words for all the founders who might take inspiration from you?
So I think that this is very important for all you founders out there. Being an entrepreneur is incredibly difficult and the odds are stacked against you. But what you are doing is absolutely essential to the world. Without entrepreneurs, without people who are willing to take a chance, new things don't happen. So whether you succeed or fail, I think that you're doing something wonderful for the world, and know that I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you so much for joining.
My pleasure.